Hey, before we jump into this awesome session of the Dealer Playbook podcast, because we value you so much as a listener, we have a free gift just for you. Head on over to the dealerplaybook.com/lead and get instant access to your copy of the Secret Dealership Lead Generation Blueprint. This is going to help you discover the 6 simple steps that will help you get more high-quality car buyers all on autopilot, and it's completely free. Head on over to the dealerplaybook.com/lead and get yours now. Now back to business.
This is the Dealer Playbook. Hey, what's going on? You're listening to session number 71 of the Dealer Playbook podcast, where we deliver creative strategies for you, today's automotive professionals. My name's Michael Cirillo, joined by the man. He's back, Mr. Robert Wiseman. What's going on?
What's up, Cirillo?
Yo, what's up? Yeah, hey, take 15 of this thing. Let's finally pound this out, right? Listen, man, super pumped to have you back on the show. We missed you last week in session 70. I was telling everybody that listened to that episode. Can you believe 71 episodes of DPB? It has been so much fun. You know, I've been letting everybody know about how we've been heads down pumping out the new website. If you haven't had a chance to go check it out, do that. As soon as you can, www.thedealerplaybook.com, because we want to get you access to the free tools we use. Robert and I use daily to thrive online. That's free gift to you just for checking out our website. So make sure you check that out when you can, www.thedealerplaybook.com. And of course, before we jump into this show and introduce our guest, we'd love a review from you guys on iTunes. It's really inspiring to see, people from all over the world leave us reviews and just let us know what they're finding valuable. Some people are giving us show suggestions and just telling us what stands out. We love hearing from you guys and absolutely appreciate that you guys are checking out the show every single week.
Tell us that we suck if you want. Whatever.
Dude, seriously. I mean, tell us that you suck. We're looking
Robert's
for honest
better than
feedback.
Michael. Whatever. Yeah.
We've heard that one before too.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, Robert has such a sexy voice, and it's like,
and I think it was a guy.
Yeah, I think it was.
So, hey, can't they get there at the dealerplaybook.com slash iTunes, right?
Yeah, it's www.thedealerplaybook.com/DPB-iTunes. DPB-iTunes, and that'll take you right over to iTunes where you can leave a review. Again, we just love that you guys are listening to the show. We get so much positive feedback, and we'd love to just see what you guys have to say over on iTunes. Now, jumping into today's episode, we're really looking forward to this. This has been quite some time in the making. We've crossed paths with our guest today on various occasions. When I introduce him, you guys are going to be like, oh yeah, he's pretty much at every conference dropping power bomb. So we just had to have him on the show, Mr. Ken Potter, who many of you will probably recall was the vice president of sales for TrueCar, but somebody who we believe is one of the foremost experts on the topic of third-party leads, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So stay tuned for our interview with Ken Potter. He is now the vice president of sales at his new venture, which is titled, and I was flipping through my 4 pages of notes, the Appraisal Lane.com. And like I just said, 4 pages of notes that I took during this sit down with Ken, because he's just got so much information that will help you guys take your career in automotive to the next level. So I think, without further ado, man, let's just dive in.
All right, and we are here with my good friend and Michael's good friend, Ken Potter. Ken, what's going on, man?
Oh, just another lovely day in sunny Los Angeles. I'm, just connecting with dealers and doing our thing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It was awesome to catch up with you like a month or so back in Charlotte, man. It was good to see you. So let's talk about this. Is what you talked about a little there, and we spoke before this about this topic, and I see a lot of people yakking it up about this topic in different Facebook groups and online. So when it comes to third-party leads for a dealer, and I know you have an opinion on something, was it like every lead is a third-party lead technically is what you say, correct?
I think that you have to look at it that way. I
Okay.
think,
Well, we'll go into that. You could dive into that, but so when it comes to just third party leads in general, like what they say, of course, you have your experience with TrueCar. Used to be the what vice president of sales or there, correct?
yep, Vice
Yeah.
President Dealer
Uh,
Development. Yep.
yep. So you have your experience with them, and they definitely, we all know there's that they have a love hate relationship with the audience, with its customers and ex customers, etc. But there's tons of others, Auto by Tel, whomever. We're talking about those third party leads. What are your thoughts on, should the dealers be buying those today? Do they need to? That let's start it with that.
So I will give it to you from the perspective of if my name were on the sign, what would I do? Because I really don't think, an outside person, you can help guide, but I don't think you should be telling a dealer what to do in general. So I always think to myself, what if my name were on the sign? What would I be doing? The very first thing, excuse me, I would be doing was making sure that I maximize what I already have. And I would have a plan around that, and I would know exactly what I'm going to get around, sales and margin and revenue and all the rest from that. And then I would look and say, okay, how do I want to enhance my business? Do I want to enhance my business by bringing in more, used inventory through trade-ins from CPO that I can get from third parties? Do I want to sell more cars? Do I need to, make a big blitz on, a certain trim level that I'm buried in? So I think you have to have a plan. Everything should start with a plan as it relates to a third party. And again, as you said, I think everything is a third party. My delineation is if a customer comes to your store, walks in, or clicks on your website, or calls you, or chat, then it is probably, you can call that a first party lead. Everything else is third party, doesn't matter where it came from. And the reason that that's important is because your salespeople have to know where the customer came from and what their intentions are. And then I think you can help them effectively get the information they need and hopefully sell them a car.
So that's where it starts, is knowing what source they came from.
I believe so. And if you go back to the premise of everything's a third party lead, we all know the statistics say that depending on who you talk to, NADA or whatever, customers visit 15 to 20 different websites, and they now go to somewhere between 1.5 to 2.5 dealers to make a buying decision. So if you think about it from that perspective, and a customer has gone to 15 different places, they're theoretically a third party lead to somebody else, even if they're a first party lead to you.
Mm-hmm.
So it isn't so much of knowing where they're coming from, it is knowing what the customer's intentions are. And I think the biggest thing that has changed in this industry is 15 years ago, customers all came to the dealership. You got to shake their hand. You got to say, hello, this is me. This is why you should buy from me. This is why you should buy from this store. Tell me about what you're trying to accomplish. I think that technology is phenomenal in how it's helped dealers, but I think it's also hurt dealers from the perspective of the mentality that, okay, customers went online 19 times. Now they just want the lowest price. Now they're calling me or they're emailing me. They give me maybe a real email, but usually a bad phone number. I'm not going to be able to, get them to the store. They just want my price. And that whole mentality, I think, takes away from, what used to be a very professional sales process around understanding the customer's intentions, finding out, what their true need was, and then selling them a car and making money on it.
Okay, very good. So let's go into when a lead comes in from whomever. Let's the majority of people that are tuning in are salespeople. So let's say that and it's open source essentially, meaning there's no BDC. Now you've traveled to thousands of dealerships across the country, right?
Yep.
What's the most common framework on a showroom floor today? Like when it comes to the leads coming through online, whether they're third party or, first party, what do they do with them?
I think the most common framework is that there is some sort of BDC or customer relationship center or somebody looking through and finding what they determine to be the hot leads or the people who are willing to come in for an appointment or the buyers. And then I think those people are typically segregated into people, who they think should be handling those. And typically what I see happen, and where I think a flaw in the process is that for all the people who submitted a lead, and we know that a great closing rate is 15, 20%. So 80 out of 100 aren't even buying, which means you probably aren't even talking to them. Those leads all flow down to the salespeople. So not only will the salespeople have to deal with live customers walking in, or some of these leads that have appointments set, but at some point in time, the manager's going to be like, "Did you call those 80 people every day?" I think that kind of gets into the problem. But so that is typically what I see as the setup. So I have a nephew who I encouraged to get in the car business. He was in the military, and he got in the car business, and he's in a rural town in South Carolina, and he went to a Toyota store, and it didn't go well. It didn't go well for him because there was no, engagement from his managers on, let me help you learn a craft and let me train you. It was do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. Kind of very old school. And he just felt he wasn't progressing. So I spent a lot of time talking to him and asking him questions. Well, tell me where you get your leads from. And he's like, well, I don't really get leads. I just am there, and somebody will say, hey, here's this customer, call them, or here's that customer, they're live, standing there, talk to them. And I'm like, well, what do you say to the customer? And typically he's like, well, I just tell them, hey, thanks for coming in. My name is Nick, and boss said, he wants me to talk to you and take you on a test drive.
Yeah.
And so, I ask him questions. I'm like, Nick, do you understand what the customer's intentions were? And of course he says to me, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, why is the person buying a car? Why are they there? It isn't because they want a car. It's because something happened in their life, whether it was something good or something bad. You get a new job, you lose your job, you get married, you get divorced, you have babies, your kids move out and go to college. There's lots of different things that would make you say, I want a different car. You buy a boat, I need a truck. So understanding these intentions will actually help you. This is what we used to do. And so because the internet has shortcut all that, and now we just look at a customer inside a CRM and we pick up the phone and go, yeah, are you ready to buy a car? So I asked him all these questions, and I said to him, do you get any leads in your CRM? He goes, no, I call all the people who that I can never get a hold of. And I'm like, okay, well, tell me how that works. He said, well, in order to get my minimum income, I have to make 85 calls a day. So I'm like,
wait on people.
Yeah. So I'm like, so you just do 85 calls. Who do you call? I don't care. I just make 85 calls. As long as I make my 85 calls, I'm good. I'm like, what if you talk to anybody? Nope, doesn't matter. Just got to make 85 calls. I'm like, okay. So, and I think that kind of goes on out there still. I think we've, especially the way people look at third-party leads. So I have.
That was the environment I was in pretty much to a T almost. So I can relate.
Yeah, I think everyone's kind of in it. Or you're in the other camp where you just assume all third-party leads are terrible.
Yeah.
Right? Which is why you have to assume everybody is a third-party lead. That's why I would have the mentality of every single customer is a third-party lead, because then you can't just pick and choose and say, I refuse to deal with third-party leads. I'm only going to deal with these people, because that doesn't exist. So, from the mentality of, everyone's a third-party lead, if you talk to the customer about what their buying intentions are and how they want the process to be. So, I spent a lot of time talking to him, and just last Saturday, he's been in the business probably about 2 months now at this new store where they're building him up and encouraging him. I said, tell me what you're going to do on Saturday. He goes, well, I've got 2 appointments set. And I'm like, do you know why the customer's coming in? Yes, one wants a Corolla, or not. He's at a Chevy store now. One wants a truck, and one wants a SUV. I'm like, Nick, do you know why the customer is coming in? Yeah, they want those cars. No, Nick, they don't want those cars. The car is the end, of what why they actually need something. So if I were you, when the customer gets there, I would welcome them to your dealership, thank them for coming in, build rapport just like you normally would, and then ask them, can you tell me how we can help you, how I can get you all the information you need so we can make sure that this truck is the right thing for you that meets your needs. And he's like, well, I wouldn't say it like that. I'm like, that's great. Say it how you want to say it. How would you say it? He's like, well, I would just kind of say, thanks for coming in. We've got a couple trucks ready for you. Can you tell me why you want this car, and what information can I give you that will help you? I'm like, great. Say that, Nick. Just say that. So I think from the mentality of, if you looked at it and said, oh, this is a third-party lead, the guy's just a price grind, he's not gonna, he's just gonna shop me, he's gonna go 4 other places, you've already told yourself that you're probably not gonna sell that customer. And that's just something that didn't exist 15 years. We never planted these seeds of doubt in our mind that leads are bad. I had a conversation the other day with a very good friend of mine named Phil Dupree. Phil Dupree is the president of Auto Vitel. He came from Auto USA, which was a AutoNation company. And when I ran CarsDirect.com for 11 years, they were one of our biggest customers of buying and selling leads. So I've known Phil for a very long time. He's a stand-up guy who wants to deliver a high-quality product to dealers. And so, we were just discussing in general third-party leads. And I literally made a joke to him. I'm like, Phil, you guys almost ought to change your name. Like, if you just changed your name and came back out and said, hey, we're something else, and somebody tried you, they might actually give you a chance, because the industry sort of looks at this stuff and says, oh, that's bad, I'm not doing it. Or worse, if the customer walked in and said, hey, I'm here from TrueCar, or I'm here from Edmunds, or I'm here from KBB, or any of these places, the salespeople are like, already in their mind, this is no good, or I'm not going to make
Well,
money.
because the managers respond the same way usually too. So obviously the salesperson is
Correct.
Yeah.
Which brings me back to my ultimate point. If you have a plan in the dealership, I'm going to put my name on a sign. If I am going to pay TrueCar money, if I'm going to pay Edmunds, KBB, Auto Vitel, and I'd probably take a look at all of them, and SEM and SEO, whoever I'm paying this money to, I'm going to make sure from me all the way down to the newest salesperson, they understand why I spent that money, what I'm trying to accomplish, and how they should interact with that customer, right? I think that's the biggest flaw. I don't understand. I've said to dealers many, many times who would, call me in, and I certainly had probably, 500 or more events where I sat in front of a dealer who, just lambasted me for what they thought, TrueCar was doing to the industry. In the end, I was like, well, how can I help you? Just how can I help you, And it just always surprised me how many people didn't really understand the program. And then I would say to them, I'm like, well, then you shouldn't do business with us. You really shouldn't do business with. No, I have to. I'm like, no, you shouldn't, because there is no I have to. If you don't get it from the top all the way down to the bottom, and it doesn't correlate all the way back to a plan, then it's going to fail. So that's sort of how I would determine third parties. I would look and I'd say, what do I need to accomplish? Who can help me accomplish that? And then I would make them part of the conversation. I'd call that vendor in every month and I'd say, here's what we did. Here's what we were trying to do. We're missing the beat here, right? It wouldn't be for me about, did I close at 6% or 12%? It would be, did it tie back to the plan I was actually trying to have, which is why I spent money with you in the first place.
Yep.
Hey, Ken, let me ask you this. So if I understand this correctly, I mean, what it really sounds like is, okay, the internet, though, in many ways has added a layer of transparency for the consumer in, getting the information they want and all those sorts of things about vehicles. It's almost taken some transparency away from the initial, process for the salesperson, because they can't really identify the intention of the customer. The why, the reason why the customer is doing all that research to begin with. How do you bridge that gap? Does it happen? Does it have to happen human to human, like person to person interaction over the phone? Is that where kind of the crutch is? Or is there a way to bridge the gap with technology so that it's easier for salespeople to understand the consumer, prior to showing up?
So that's a great question, and I think I've always been under the belief, I sold my first car I think in 1997 or something, and I've always been under the belief that the customer should lead the process. You should lead the closing aspects of the process, but that comes later, right? So let the customer lead the process. And so from my perspective, if somebody came to you via chat, then you should try to give them enough information to get them to want to take the next step with you in that chat. Right? So you have to understand some things of what they're looking for. Same thing with the telephone, same thing with setting an appointment. So certainly technology can help, but I think you have to sort of look at what the customer's doing, right? So from my perspective, again, I have said this before at some of these places that I've spoken at, and some people thought I had lost my mind, but I would run what I would call a customer relationship center. And I certainly would have those people interacting via telephone, chat, and email with every customer I could. And the customers who I could not talk to, I would not put them on a salespeople. So that's a pretty bold step. And what you'd end up happening is if you have 1,000 leads coming to your dealership and you're talking to, 300 of those people and selling 150, which is a pretty good closing rate. I would only focus myself on those 300. I'd figure out another way to continually market to the other people using technology and some other things. But from a human to human perspective, I would use my resources, and the dealership's most important resources are their people. I would use those resources to make sure I fully understood what the customer was trying to do and separate myself from everybody else that they're probably talking to, which would not be that difficult because I think the bar is set really low for when people call an internet lead or what they determine as a lead. So I would overwhelm those people, and it would all be about what they're trying to do. And then, of course, when they came into the dealership, then that's when you get to have some control in the process and control the closing process.
And what I like about that, though, is it is a bold step to kind of not pass off leads that you haven't had any contact with, but it makes the sales process so much more efficient, and it also, from what I see, would increase morale because now the leads that are getting passed off to the sales team are people that you've at least had some level of contact with.
Mm-hmm. Correct. And you have a next step. I think every time you hang up the phone, and this is what I adopted with a dealer, right? So at TrueCar, obviously 3 years ago when I went to TrueCar, they were what they called a swirl at the point in time, meaning like going down the drain. And we had to literally look at it. We had to get the right people. Once we get the right people in, we had to literally look at it and say, every single interaction you have with a dealer, you must earn their business, and you must set a next step toward continually earning their business. And I think the same applies to a customer. If your CRC BDC talks to a customer, you have to determine where they are in the process, right? It is totally okay to say, this customer has 8 months left on his lease. He may consider something sooner, but he's not really ready to do that right now. He'd like a little bit more information on this, this, and this. He'd like information as it pertains to what kind of offers there are getting him out early and maybe paying off some of his overage on the mileage. And that's what you have to pass down to the salesperson. So when they look at it, they fully understand that, hey, wait a minute. This is a guy who started their shopping experience. I can work him over the next 2-3 months, give him the information, and then sell him a car, as opposed to just picking up the phone trying to get him to come in today and buy a car. Right. And so everybody has shortcut that process. If you fully understand where the customer is and you pass it along with that next step of saying, how do I earn your business and what is the next step? To me, that's the biggest lost thing from a third-party lead perspective. People don't know what the next step is. And it's because they've got 300 leads in their queue and their managers are saying, call them all and call them all. And, everyone gets a mentality of like they're all garbage. And, the ones who do come in are the ones who are only going to grind me out. So, to me, it's all about the next step. The only thing I would be concerned with is what is the customer's next step?
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about it, there's only X amount of next steps that it possibly could be, so it really wouldn't be that much of a, you could go in and kind of map out the process for each next step, so to speak.
Sure. And one of the things that, some of my friends tell me, you shouldn't give away all these ideas, but I freely do because I think that if you can use them and execute on them, go ahead, it's great. You wouldn't be taking anything necessarily from me or other dealers, but I think there's a real need in the industry. Everyone is going on a mad rush for mobile, right? So everybody's creating all sorts of mobile this and mobile that and mobile apps for the CRM and all this sort of stuff, but it really isn't tied to a consumer process. It's tied to a dealership process. And so again, if my name were on the sign, I would figure out a way to work with somebody where when my CRC talked to a customer, again, chat, email, phone, whatever, we would take the only goal of that call would be what is the next step. And as you said, Robert, there's only a few of them. Some next steps are I need to determine whether I'm buying a Toyota, a Chevy, or a Mazda, right? So you're going to help give the customer information on why your Toyota is a great purchase, right? The next step could be I need to understand what my car is worth. You're going to provide that customer with information, whether they come into the store, whether it's email, whether it's chat, on what their car is worth and why you're a better process for that. And everything has to be the next step. And then I think that I would use some sort of a appointment setting where, again, you could do it in a mobile world where the CRC would say, okay, Robert, thank you for calling me today. I understand you're definitely buying a Camry. You've narrowed your choices down, and you definitely want a Camry. You're trying to consider what you're thinking about on your trade-in, whether or not you want to trade in one car or two cars on this purchase, and you've already got a bank loan. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to set you up for an appointment to bring your cars in. So we will get you numbers on your two cars, and then you can determine where you want to go from there. And then when I would set that appointment up, I would set it up electronically, so Robert gets a text message from me saying, this is what is going to happen. You can expect to be at our store anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour to accomplish these things, which are appraise your two cars, look at the Toyota Camry SE in green that I will have ready for you. Right? So you tell the customer this is exactly what's going to happen, and then you tell the salesperson this is exactly what's going to happen. And from a management perspective, it isn't did you call all the 300 leads? It is, did that customer come in? Oh, they did. Okay. Did you appraise both of their cars? You did. Did you show them the green car? Now what is the next step? Right? It just literally, I would simplify it like that. Where everybody knows what the next step is. I don't care about anything in the CRM or any of the stuff there, where the customer, what they've done, any of that. I only care about what they've said, here's my next step. And then I would just do the next step with them and figure out what the next step is. And as you said, Robert, there's not that many. And if you're nice to them in any one of these steps, they're going to buy a car from you.
Yep. No, I mean, I like that. Okay, so that's from a name on the sign approach. But yeah, before we go into wrapping up, that guy out there, let's say I'm just going to kind of go into what my situation was like. And I know I talk to a lot of guys that are in the same, so that they would find some value in this. So I'm in the dealership, and nobody that I'm asking, I want to know a little bit more about where these leads came from, this and that. It's like, no, listen, take the name and the number or the email and call them. Like, I'm not getting any feedback or response. So I get this fresh lead, just came in. They send out a regular autoresponder, what have you, with it. What can that individual do? What should be their steps then to get the most out of it? Let's say it's a solo person, they can't get any buy-in from, the management for all the technology stuff to make it easier, et cetera.
So if you just have a fresh lead, obviously the most important thing to do is call the customer. I would call the customer 100% of the time. If I were a salesperson, I don't know that I'd be able to have this in a dealership, but I would actually want no email. Right? There's a mad rush from the manufacturers to say, hey, you got to start the clock to make sure that we did something with the lead. Mm-hmm. That doesn't do anything. Sending them some emails that, it's as if you walked into Best Buy and you were looking at refrigerators and they had, 3 guys up at the front trying to sell you computers. That doesn't help you, right? And the customer's not going to be interested. They're just going to be irritated, right? They want to know. They want to start with what they want. So I would kind of look at it from a perspective of, I'm just going to call the customer, right? And I don't need to send them a bunch of stuff. I don't need to, send them 14 different emails over the next week because I don't want to call them because I think the phone number is bad. I would call them, and that's what I would do. I would call them for 3 days in a row, and then I would also change up my call times. One of the things that I share with a lot of people is every single site, whether it's the dealer's website, the manufacturer's website, third-party lead site, Auto Trader, all these different things, they have different descriptions for how to contact a customer. It might be home, work, or mobile. It might be office. It might be work. It might be personal. It might be whatever. So you have no idea, just because your CRM says this is the guy's work phone number, it might not be his work. So if you picked up the phone, or his personal cell, and you called up somebody's personal number and they said, hey, this is Robert, leave me a message, and the name was different, but you were expecting that to be somebody's work, you might not actually call it back. You might think the information is bad. So I would certainly change up my times, and I would try to call people, early and late, and I would leave a really nice message with what my intentions were. Robert, you are requesting some information from me. I've called you a few times each day. You're probably very busy. I hope I'm not irritating you or filling up your voicemail box. Here's what I'd like to do. And I think that ultimately is all you need to do. And just move on to the next one. I think you just have to continually do that. I don't believe there's any luck in, let me just sit and dial for dollars. I just don't believe that.
Okay, so well, let me ask you this: when it comes to an email, though, let's say that they are on that clock, and sometimes the salesperson is held responsible to get that response out there. Like, what's your thoughts on like pricing? If they did click on a get a quote and you don't deliver them a price, do you think that's a negative?
I do. I think if they said get a price, well, it depends on how the site is worded and what it looks like. Because sometimes get a price, the customer doesn't even know what they're doing, right? Get a price might lead them into another page, and then 2 pages later, they might fill out the form. That's not intuitive that the customer was like, oh, I clicked this and filled out the form to get a price, right? So it depends on how you structure your site. But I do believe you should start wherever the customer left off. So if the customer, yeah, and I'll tell you, so I built a product at Cars Direct that we didn't really take traction because it was too early on, 6-7 years ago. We allowed dealers to run all of their third party leads, no matter where they got them from, and their own website through our wholesale network system, which would then dedupe them across every lead that was out there, and it would also share that information back with the dealer. So you would see exactly where the customer went and what they did, right? So as a rep, I could say, oh, the customer went to Edmonds and went here, they went there, they went there, they went there, and then I would have all this information, right? So you would know it. In absence of having that, you just need to be, you sell yourself. You need to be friendly, and I think sending a nice email that's personal is the way to go. So I shared this with Nick. I'm like, Nick, what do you do for follow-up? He goes, I don't do follow-up. Somebody else does it. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, well, I don't do anything. If the customer leaves and they get emails and stuff. I'm like, you don't send the customer an email? Yeah. You don't send the customer an email yourself? No, we don't. Which is kind of crazy. And so I told him, I said, and so I kind of realized we had to go start at step number one. And I'll say to you what I said to him. Robert, you're in the car business. If one of your friends called you and said, hey, Robert, don't you work over there at the Hyundai store? You would say, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then they would say, I'm thinking about buying one of those. What would you say to that person?
I'd say, yeah, well, I'm your guy.
Yeah, how can I help?
Yeah.
Right? You would talk to them like a normal human being. You wouldn't talk to them like an autoresponder. You wouldn't talk to them with a phone script. You wouldn't do any of that. And that's how I think everyone should treat normal consumers. I'm a big fan of email, but it needs to be tied to something. That's why the next step is important. Because if you start sending customers emails that are irrelevant to them, you lose traction with the customer, and they might even just shut you off totally. Yeah. But if you sent the customer an email that said, hey, you wanted information about trade-in, let me give you a little sheet on how we determine values of cars here, which first off, the dealership would actually have to have this document to send it. But let's assume they had it and they sent it, right? And then you could also give the customer, here's some what other people do. Other people might go here. They might go to Trade and Marketplace. They might do this. They might do this. So you're actually giving them the information they want. I think that, when you go back to transparency isn't just, did I give you a price? Transparency is, am I willing to be transparent with you about the information you want? And I think I'm a big fan of email and a big fan of text messaging and chat, whatever the customer wants. But just do it like you would talk to one of your friends or your brother.
Mm-hmm. Be human, be authentic.
Yep.
Okay, so this is really enlightening information, I think super valuable. I'm going to recap this just to make sure we're not missing any for those of you listening in, and then we're going to wind down this episode. So, Ken, just to kind of recap here, first thing is, we approach this from your name's on the sign. The first thing that you would do is maximize what you're already doing and, really enhance from there the things that you think you need to do to enhance your business. But it really starts with that first step of identifying what are we already doing and how can we maximize it. And then, shifting the mindset, which I think is fascinating how you talked about how everybody's a third-party lead, and there's kind of a loop there where even a first-party lead is a third-party lead to somebody else and vice versa. And so shifting that mindset can really empower the dealer to change the way they handle and think about those leads. One of the other things that stood out to me is just identifying the customer's intention, knowing why it is that they're looking for the vehicle they're looking for, and changing some of the processes in the store And then, of course, we've ended up here now with transparency, and your point about transparency not just being about providing the price alone, but being transparent with all of the information that the customer is looking for. If you had to sum all of what we've just talked about up in kind of one statement, how would you kind of sum up the handling of these third-party leads?
I think, I typically use this for everything in life. Seek first to understand, right? So, Mr. Customer, where are you at? How can I help you, right? And if I understood how I can help you, and then I delivered all of the information, I believe you actually earn the right to say to the customer, Mr. Customer, I don't understand why you're not buying from me. So many people shortcut that, right? So they're like, I called you, you wanted a price, I gave it to you, why aren't you buying? Right? And so we've shortcut all the way from A to Z, and we've left everything else out. I think you have to earn the right to say to a customer, and I think you can do it on third-party leads. First off, that's why you got to have the mentality. So like I was telling you, my friend Phil from Auto by Tel, 70% of Auto by Tel's traffic is organic. People wouldn't even know that, right? They just assume, oh, those are junk leads, people. So I mean, you have to change your mindset. You have to be willing to be open to no matter where the customer came from, but then also tie that to only dealing with people you can talk to. Like, I truly think it's a waste of time to just call and call and call and never talk to anybody, or email and never get a response. That you got to figure out how to get that out of your business, because the way that technology is evolving, 2 years from now, our landscape will be very different. It won't be just let me pound the phones and let me pound the email and see who I can get in my store. Customers will even have more information 2 years from now. They'll have more choices, more options. I think it just simply has to be, you have to open your mind to say, these people want help. They need a sales professional. I am a sales professional, and I can enhance their experience. That's just how I would look at it.
Right on. Man, thanks so much for being on the show. Where can our listeners get a hold of you? On Twitter or Facebook or anything like that?
Yes, sir. Anywhere. Ken Potter, they can ken@theappraisalLane.com. I'd love to, get debate and feedback on, should you not be calling dead leads? I don't think you should be, or anything. I'm willing to help anybody. I've told this to many people. I'm willing to come to people's stores, whether or not you do business with my company or not, and help your salespeople, because I think it's what we all owe to the industry. I'm proud to say I'm a card guy. So Ken at the Appraisal Lane, Ken R. Potter on Twitter, Ken Potter Facebook.
You're the man, Ken. Thank you.
Right on, man. Thanks so much, Ken.
I think it's wonderful what you guys are doing. So I'm glad. I'm honored to be a part of it.
Oh,
appreciate
thanks,
you, man.
Yeah, appreciate absolutely. It, bro. And that was Mr. Ken Potter, formerly of True Car fame, now from the Appraisal Lane. Cirillo, what do you think? I mean, I've always liked Ken. I've watched him speak, I don't know, everywhere I've ever been, I think. And he definitely knows the game.
Yeah, I mean, he, in my mind, I don't think I've met anybody that knows more on the topic than he does. We've had the privilege of seeing him at different conferences and mastermind groups and speaking on this topic. And I mean, he just approaches it from a level of authority. A couple of things that stood out to me that, like we said right after we got off the call with him, I just kind of mentioned to you, I'm like, it's a lot of this is so no-brainer. But I mean, I guess if that was really the case, how come more people aren't thinking this way? What stood out to me is kind of timely for me, because I just saw this image on Facebook. It was a Gary Vaynerchuk image, and it just basically said intent is everything, or I believe that intent is everything. And so that's really resonated with me, because intent really is everything. But now jumping into this episode, right, you hear from a different angle and from a different context how Ken Potter's saying you need to know what the intent of the consumer is so that you can properly help them. And it really was, for me, the big takeaway, it really was kind of that the late Zig Ziglar saying, help other people get what they want, you'll get everything that you want. Because it's not like he's approaching the car sales process from me. It really had to do more with, I need to understand your intentions as a consumer. What is it that you're looking for so that I can line you up with the information you need? And I think that's really falls in line with what you and I believe.
Yeah, definitely. And I just like the whole thing about just like get them to their next step. until the time comes that you get them in. And that's something that's actionable for, no matter what position you're at in the dealership or where you're handling where you get a hold of the lead at what point.
Sure. Yeah. And I think the last thing that stood out to me, and it's something that you and I have been talking a lot about lately on Periscope and in blogging and all that kind of stuff. We get so caught up in these concepts of, B2C and business to consumer, or B2B, business to business. And what Ken submits and what I would like to kind of add my voice to is it's got to be more P2P, like people to people, human to human. You need to be concerned about them as a human being, enriching and enhancing their life and helping them get what they want. And like he said, let them, for a portion of it that makes sense, let the consumer control the process.
Yeah. I mean, if you're calling in, if somebody's calling into a dealership, I'm thinking of me when I'm shopping for something. Now that when I was inside, I was on the inside, and it's like, man, I just wanted to get them in. That was kind of like, and that's all everybody ever said. Here, take this lead, get them in. It was never like find out what their problem is. It was get them in. But it's like, if I wanted to, I call in for information. All right, well, you want to set an appointment? Come check it out. Well, like if I wanted to set an appointment or I wanted to come in, I would have just came in.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, for sure. Yeah. So there you guys have it. I hope you guys found value in this episode with Ken Potter. We certainly did. Lots of power bombs there. You can check out the show notes where we're going to link you up with any of the information and resources that we talk about from this episode with Ken Potter at www.thedealerplaybook.com/71. Now, make sure you guys are following us on Instagram and checking in with us because we are headed out to Amsterdam. By the time you guys hear this episode, we will be eating fresh fruits and cheeses on the canals in Amsterdam.
Well, that's a lie because this is airing Thursday. We don't leave till Monday.
Well, I'd just like to believe that when they listen to this, I'm going to be like being fed
Even
grapes
so.
and
you
cheese.
Probably will be. You'll be at home.
No, nobody feeds me grapes at home. Anyways, listen, man, follow us on Instagram because we're going to be posting lots of content, lots of pictures. Follow us on Facebook. We'd love to hear your feedback on Facebook as well. Also, if you guys have show suggestions or guest suggestions, hit us up on Facebook. We'd love to interact with you there. Just simply search for The Dealer Playbook and we will pop up. Once again, we appreciate you guys so much. We look forward to catching up with you next time. Talk later.
Thanks.